Here we go. It's episode 143 with the great Rob Staton, Seahawks Draft Blog, brought to you by Superior Linen Service. Family owned and operated since 1926. They provide the highest quality of products and service in the greater Puget Sound area. Get a free quote today at suplinen.com. Give them a call, 253-383-2636. Check out Rob's work, SeahawksDraftBlog.com, his YouTube and Twitter page at Rob Staton. Before we talk Seahawks, how'd the live show go? I saw the pictures. It looked great.
Amazing. And
Good.
you know, when you do a radio show, you will know this, Puck. You know, there are a lot of people listening, but they're not sat right in front of you. They haven't driven to the venue to come and watch you. You know, they're often at home or in a car or something like that, listening to you or at work. So it was a surreal experience. You know, when we first went out on the stage and you're looking across there and there's like lights on you, and you can see all of the audience. It was, like I say, incredibly surreal. On the wall as you were sort of going out from the dressing room. I can't believe we had a dressing room. We were sort of sat in the dressing room thinking of all the bands that had played there, thinking, imagine what has got on in this dressing room, like the main dressing room at the City Hall where I live. And on the wall outside, it has all of the names of the bands like Led Zeppelin, Beatles, Elton John, Queen, who performed there. Like, what are we doing here? So like we went out there, did a 2-hour show on the stage, and then afterwards, just couldn't believe that we've done it. So we've been basking a little bit this week in the fact that we've actually done this, and it's one of those things that I'll always remember. That's
amazing, man. That is so awesome, because you're right. When you do this, right, and you both, you know, radio guys, when you do radio, you just have no idea who's listening at all, and then it's like you're just talking to the microphone, you're just talking to your partner or whatever. And then when you actually see the audience, you're like, there would be a momentary stage fright for me, for sure. If like you see all these people looking back at you, like, I don't feel comfortable. This is not my comfort zone.
And also, like, they want to be entertained. Like, usually when I'm on the radio show, I'll just start saying, oh, this player, he needs to play better, or this coach needs to do this. And like, people are happy with that. They'll take a bit of debate about sport. When you're on a stage with a live audience, they want to laugh. They want to have some fun. Yeah. You know, it's Friday night. So I'm out there like starting the set with some gags. And I'm thinking, like, we don't do this on the show. Like, we have a laugh sometimes, but I'm not a stand-up comedian. And yet the first sort of 10 minutes of the show was trying to be a stand-up comedian. So just the adrenaline rush we got from it, was amazing. So loved every minute. And we're already hoping we're going to do it again next year. So bring it on.
Good. That's I'm glad it went well. Well, that's awesome. Let's talk a little Seahawks. So I just had recorded a little bit ago with Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, and so I'll put this on your radar. They've on the Insiders today, so if it's 4:00 Pacific, so whenever that is for you. I mean, late at night for you, but watch it midnight. So watch it tomorrow, maybe, or unless you're up at midnight. He's going to have John Schneider on.
Wow.
So what would you, if you were sitting in there, what would you want to ask John Schneider as he appears on the Insiders today for the NFL Network? What do you got? I fired off everything at him, like, why'd you fire Pete Carroll?
Yeah.
Why do you want to bring Jamal Adams back? All that stuff. Why didn't you go get Michael Penix, you son of a bitch? Yeah, all that.
I think that, why I think Jamal Adams, if I was going to interview John Schneider, if John Schneider was joining us today, I would put some serious consideration into the wording that I would ask him about the Jamal Adams question to try and make it impossible for him to worm out of it a little bit and give a definitive answer on that. I'd love to know what scope they have between now and the trade deadline to be somewhat active, because I just when I look at the roster, and I look at the players who are still out there. You know, there are still some unsigned players, and there are still some players who may well become available down the line. That if the Seahawks got into a position, Puck, when we did the schedule show, we're saying, well, why can't the Seahawks go and get like 10 or 11 wins or something like that? And maybe that was ambitious and that was just heat of the moment. But if they are going to be the kind of team that could do that, and given that we're only a few months removed from them making a very aggressive move for Leonard Williams before the trade deadline, I'd like to know kind of what scope they have for doing that, because I know just from looking at over the cap that there are some moves they could make to create some cap space to still be active, and I always kind of like the feeling that you could do those things, and I think John Schneider feels that way as well. So I'd like the thought that they could make a move or two between now and whenever it is, middle of October.
Okay, how would you pin him down on the Adams? Come on, give. I'm John Schneider. Pin me down.
I would probably say Jamal Adams embarrassed the franchise when he criticized the wife of a New York-based reporter. How on earth can you justify bringing that individual back into your organization?
I mean, that's pretty direct there, Rob. How do you think he'd answer that? Hey, I appreciate the question, Rob. Thank you.
I appreciate the question, and I'm never speaking to you again. That's probably what it'd say.
You can go F off, bloke.
I mean, look, this is the thing about over here. That is the kind of thing you would expect. Like
when you say like that line of questioning, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. And I think over here, to an extent, it's somewhat similar to, I don't know, like New York or Philadelphia, and the way that the media goes over there. So for that reason, I think a question like that would go down like the proverbial SHIT sandwich, with someone like John Schneider, who's perhaps not used to stuff like that. But I do think it's important for people who are in positions of authority and who are big decision makers of, major sports teams and franchises, that they do answer some difficult questions sometimes. And I think it's been a shame actually that over the years, increasingly people are not just talking about the Seahawks, I'm talking about like lots of different teams. They get a bit precious about when they're put on the spot. And I think it's part of the job. I think you should be asked difficult questions. And I think the fans in that particular topic with Jamal Adams, a lot of fans would like to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I always think there's a way to ask difficult questions without just, completely coming across like as an ass. And I think that, and I think that's okay. I think
I always thought Jim was very good at that, by the way.
He's great at it. I think he's great at it. I think sometimes and he's still alive, by the way, folks. I mean, we're not talking about him in the past. He's still around. But you got to ask direct questions and just be fair and not worry about, because I think a lot of people are just worried about how am I going to be treated now by like the PR staff? Well, that's not your worry. Your worry is not that. Your worry is to do the job of your readers, your listeners, your viewers. They want to know. You're working for them, and you're working for the ones who want to know the truth, not the fanboys, not those, because there are the fanboys who it doesn't matter what the team does, what the player does. They're just pro player, pro team all the time.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of fans like that. I can remember doing a quite a tetchy interview, probably around September time with one of the coaches around here, and 95% of the reaction, because this coach had not won any games, was very positive to the line of questioning. But there were like a 5% who were probably more vocal than anybody else. Why are you asking that? This is a disgrace, blah, 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 blah. And it's always that way. And you sometimes have a tendency to focus on that criticism, and or the criticism of a club or the communications team from a team who are unhappy with you. But at the end of the day, you've got a job to do. Journalism is not about being pally, friendly all the time. Journalism is about, being a bit mischievous, probing, pushing, trying to find out what's going on. And, I think that Jamal Adams question is quite direct, but I think that for me is a question that I would love to hear the answer to as a fan of the Seahawks, not as a journalist. For me, if Jamal Adams was, I don't know, pick a player. If his sort of story was Draymond Jones, they signed him for a lot and he's been a bit underwhelming, but we'll bring him back and give it another go under a new staff. No problem. The bigger problem for me is that I think Jamal Adams has been a bit of a jerk. I don't think that he has shown any kind of attitude of regret towards acting that way. And I don't think the Seahawks did a good enough job when it happened in making him face the music for some truly ridiculous comments that he made online and to the media. So I think it's important that if there's going to be any chance for him coming back, that is addressed.
What else would you want to ask him? Would you want to ask him about the future of DK? How does the Jefferson contract affect the way that you look at DK Metcalf? What about the quarterback position? I mean, a direct question would be, is the quarterback in the next 3 years on your roster right now?
I would say to him, well, the quarterback thing could be, there's 3 or 4 questions that you could go for there. Why have you consistently said year after year, your aim is to draft a quarterback every year, and it is now 2 in, I think, 15 drafts? How do you justify that? And then I think in my mind, I would anticipate what the answer is going to be and would have my next question ready, which is, well, why don't you take shots? You've taken numerous mid to late round flyers on different positions. Why not just spend? You've made quite a relatively, I was going to say expensive. I think it's wrong because people will pick up on that. The Sam Howell trade's not expensive. It's more expensive than a 5th round pick. You had 2 4th round picks 2 years ago. Why didn't you just draft Sam Howell then if you really valued him in the 4th round? Like, what, that would have been the perfect example. You liked this guy enough to trade for him now. You then say afterwards that you always kind of admired him. Why didn't you draft him in the 4th round and have him for 4 years? Like that's the kind of thing I'd want to know. If the franchise ethos is to draft quarterbacks with the objective of developing them, why wasn't Sam Howell drafted 2 years ago? So the stuff like that, I'd say to him, can the Seahawks seriously win a Super Bowl without having the guy at quarterback? And by the guy, everybody knows what you mean. A Mahomes, an Allen, those kind of players. Is it a case of you have to find that guy? And then also
I think he would. Would he not counter with, well, Buffalo's had that guy and they haven't won anything.
But and then my counter to that would be, and Buffalo are at least contenders now, and a bounce of a ball in the playoffs the season before last. I mean, look, they had a ridiculous overtime battle, back and forth battle that ended up in overtime against the Chiefs, and bounce of a ball here or there. Josh Allen's in the Super Bowl and maybe wins one. Seahawks have not been to the NFC Championship since the 2014 season.
Counter would be Brock Purdy with San Francisco. Is he the guy?
Counter would be Kyle Shanahan is the coach of the Niners.
And I wish I had him. If he said that.
See, do you know what I keep thinking is that as we're having this back and forth, wouldn't it be amazing if you could have a back and forth with the NFL GM that way? And listen, I think it's hard because the kind of questions that I'd love to ask John Schneider, if it was from a journalistic point of view, if you were going to do this kind of an interview, you would also have to have some different questions that were more, tell us about Byron Murphy, just so that he doesn't storm out of the room. You would have to sort of have some lights to go with the shade. But I do think, and look, John Schneider is, in my opinion anyway, a tremendous GM who has built, we can all talk about the drafts since the LOB era and a lot of misses and an inability to get the team back to where they were originally. But this is a man who built, with Pete Carroll, one of the all-time legendary teams that deserves to be considered one of the all-time great rosters. And for that reason, I think he deserves a lot of credit. Mike Macdonald, I was listening to Adam Schefter speaking here this week, and he said that Mike Macdonald, he mentioned that Mike Macdonald's wife was a cheerleader for Washington and that they have roots in Washington, D.C., and yet he's traveled with no roots to the other end of the country to come and coach the Seahawks. And the main reason for that was apparently because he has 100% faith in John Schneider as a GM. So the Seahawks have an asset there, and I think that has to be mentioned as well. But there are some things that he needs to also be quizzed on, in my opinion, and the Jamal Adams shenanigans is one of them.
Yeah, I don't know if you like a good mailbag. I love a good mailbag, and I was peeking into Condota's mailbag the other day, and someone asked him a question about, hey, if this doesn't go well this year, is John Schneider going to be on the hot seat? And I'm just curious. I mean, I don't think he'd be on the hot seat this year. I mean, the owner of the team chose him over Carroll. He's going to get plenty of time. But I wonder, though, how much pressure is on him because, everything is now on his shoulders, Rob. Everything. The entire organization, where he got to share it with Carroll, and maybe even Carroll took more of the credit or more of the blame, what have you, of who actually constructed the team and all that. But now this is all John Schneider. If Mike Macdonald fails, John Schneider's fault. If draft picks fail, it's his fault. First time in his career where he's had this much probably pressure on his shoulders.
Agreed. I don't think he's under much pressure based on the results of this year. I suspect that ownership do not want to have a chaos franchise. And if you were to fire Pete Carroll and then allow Schneider to appoint the replacement and then fire Schneider after a year, that would be absolutely insane and would make the franchise look ridiculous. And who in their right mind would want to become the GM of the Seahawks? Any of the top candidates would probably be put off and run a mile from it because of the last 2 years. And also that GM would not be able to appoint a head coach because he'd have to inherit, presumably, Mike Macdonald, who wouldn't be fired after a year. So I think there is a grace period here. I think the other thing we have to remember is, and again, qualifier, no disrespect to the Pete Carroll, before the Carroll, the people who are still devoted to Pete Carroll come after me on Twitter or Seahawks Draft Blog. I think Carroll was completely replaceable this year, and so it proved. I think it was time. If you were said to me now that in the June the 6th, if we were looking ahead to another season of Carroll and Clint Hurt and Shane Waldron, I'd be despairing. Puck, we'd be doing these segments every week, and I haven't got any hair to tear out, so it'd have to be beard hair that I'd be tearing out because the thought of it is just unthinkable.
Yeah.
But with Schneider, I do think he's much harder to replace. Like if you were to fire Schneider in, let's say, 8-9 months' time, it's very hard to think of, go and get a better GM. And with Carroll, I think it was very clear that there were candidates out there that could replace Pete Carroll, and we've got one of them. So I think, and also the other thing I would say is, I think this is going to be I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a moot point. I think the Seahawks are going to be just fine this year. I think Macdonald and the staff that he's built and the team that they've got, there's not going to be any danger of anybody getting fired in a year's time. I think they're going to have a good season.
Yeah, I mean, just listen. I think in any sport, I mean, you tell me in European football. I mean, who has more credit? He's like I say, European football. No,
I'm not laughing at that.
Who gets more credit? Who gets more credit for the construction of the team? Is the coach, or do you call him a general manager there, like whoever runs the team?
So, I mean, traditionally, the coach would be the manager, and so over here it'd be a bit different. The coach would buy the players, choose the players.
Okay.
He would be in control of everything, training the players, tactics, everything. So it's a little bit different now. You tend to have these head of recruitment, we would call them, or who would work with the coach, but the coach would technically have final say.
So the coach kind of runs everything over there.
But if we're talking about time, it's not unusual for the teams over here to have 3 coaches in a single season. Like, you do not get time over here. The average length of tenure for what would be their head coach in the second tier of English football, which is where the 2 main teams in my region are, is 6 months.
Oh, Jesus.
So if you do not hit the ground running, you get fired. Like, it's no different. They will cut you quicker than anything, and they will pay off your salary, and they will get the next guy in. So it's a completely different world. You get a lot more time in the NFL as a coach to build something, unless your name is Jim Mora or somebody like that, the Steve. I can't remember his name. The guy who was at Arizona, got one season.
Wilkes.
Ago, Steve Wilkes.
Yeah.
So but over here it's cutthroat. You sink or swim.
Yeah. But so just to clarify, because I don't know, I'm just asking out of curiosity. So there is not like a general manager and then a coach. The coach is making all kind of the personnel decisions, who they're going to get, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some teams will have a director of football.
Okay.
Who might have overall say on recruitment, but ultimately the coach is the buck stops with the coach. When the hits the fan, the fans are calling for the coach to go, and they'll do it in the stadium. Like, there's no just booing at halftime politely like you have sometimes at Lumen Field. There is all on, chants, get out of the club. You don't know what you're doing. They'll sing that. It's full on. We are going to make it very clear we're unhappy. What
did you make of the Jefferson contract with Minnesota? And then let's just bring it here to DK. How does that affect DK in a year or so?
Well, he'll be rubbing his hands, because when he sees all of the contracts that are still, the market is not slowing down. When the Christian Kirk signing was made, a couple of off seasons ago, I think it was, and he completely reset the market for receivers, I think teams will probably be ruining Trent Baalke's frankly preposterous decision to pay Kirk that, because then everybody else's salary just blew up as well. And we are still seeing it now to the point that Jefferson is earning a deal which is it the most expensive non-quarterback contract in the NFL
Pretty
now,
sure,
something
yeah.
like that? So theoretically, you know, I would have thought teams would think you've got quarterbacks, pass rushers, maybe left tackles, and then we can get by everywhere else. Now, it's not so much. I don't have a problem with Minnesota paying Justin Jefferson. It's that sort of second tier of receiver, of which I think DK Metcalf is in. They're going to expect an awful lot of money now, and the Seahawks are going to have to decide probably within the next 12 months, is DK Metcalf worth a contract that otherwise would have been saved for an Aaron Donald type player? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I think it's great timing for him that he's got a new coordinator, and I think Ryan Grubb will make the best. But if I had to predict what I think happens right now, Puck, I think DK Metcalf will play very well in this scheme, but not well enough to justify a Justin Jefferson style contract. And that means that next offseason, the big talking point that we'll be having as Seahawks fans, aside from perhaps what the future is at quarterback, is going to be what do they do with DK Metcalf? Do they trade him? Do they keep him? Or do they re-sign him? I think that's going to be that is a huge storyline, which is it's 6 months away.
It's massive. I mean, listen. I mean, DK Metcalf should do everything to get in the good graces of Ryan Grubb right now, because Ryan Grubb has the ability to make DK Metcalf a lot of money. Simply put, I mean, he has got the ability to make that guy a ton of money in about a year's time.
Yeah, and do you know what the thing is if DK Metcalf explodes into life and takes the next step this year, I have no problem with paying him. Like I was chatting to Adam Nathan, who I do my streams with, and he was saying, I'm not that keen on paying a receiver this kind of money. And my response to that is, if DK Metcalf takes the next step and is a top 20, 25 player in the NFL, by the end of this year, because he's got a better offensive coordinator and system, then I think you can justify paying him a lot of money. I think you pay top players. You can't afford to be a team that gives away your best players. And if he is a top player, giving him to somebody else like the Chiefs would just help them. And you have to keep hold of your best players. But the problem is if he is not, you have to be very, very strict. Well, you can only pay the best players in the league the best money. And if he's not one of the best players in the league, then you have to think about what you're going to do with that. But the other problem is we could all say, oh, he's not worth that money, and trade him in a year's time. What's the trade market going to be like if you think, yeah, we've got to trade for him, but then we've got to pay him $30 million a year? So that might hamper his trade value, Mike. I just think the way this is going, Puck, we're going to see teams prioritize drafting receivers more and more. They're going to look for value, and they're going to spend their money elsewhere.
For sure. I mean, just look at the draft. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe this year's draft was unique because of all the talent that was coming out. But I mean, look at all the guys who got picked. I mean, and it saves them a lot of money. If I can pick a guy in the draft that's not going to cost me as much money as somebody like, Justin Jefferson or DK Metcalf, you're going to do it, 10 times out of 10. I just want to see him. I think we all want to see him be used, and we're hoping that Ryan Grubb can do it, because in his first few years in the league, and he's put up good numbers. The numbers could be better for him, but he's not been used properly. He just hasn't been. And I don't want to excuse DK a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of growing up DK Metcalf needs to do, and I'm going to be real interested to see when he has that first dust up, that first meltdown in the game. I'm gonna like, my eyeballs are gonna go right to Mike Macdonald. How does he handle that? Because the previous guy, I mean, Carroll, he handled it very differently. He just, okay, it's okay, pat on the butt, and get back, and we're gonna need you later. Mike Macdonald doesn't strike me as someone that's gonna act that way, but we'll see. But I want to see an offensive coordinator just utilize a guy who's a freaking unicorn. Like, get him the ball.
Well, that's why he has the potential to be the kind of player that gets the money, because he is a unicorn. And the thing with him is, I think too often it's been deep ball or nothing and 1v1 opportunity. And I don't think that's his best. I mean, look, we were talking recently that you could throw it up to Mike Evans in Tampa Bay and he will win the vast majority of his one-on-ones, and so would Julio Jones in his peak and stuff like that. I don't think that's DK's best thing, even though to look at him, you'd think it would be. I actually think the best thing for him is when he gets those opportunities to run away from people, and that often means running at an angle, not running in a straight line. So when he's running across the field, if he can get that initial separation just because he's faster than the guy who's covering him, and you can get the ball in his hands, his ability to turn up the corner, the one touchdown that I think was in his first year or his second year when he played Tampa Bay, and he just turned, he was on a crossing route, turned the corner, exploded, ran the length of the field. That's the kind of thing that he could do. And look, Calvin Johnson used to be very good on slants. Calvin Johnson used to be very good at running. It wasn't just a sort of 1v1 red line, go and beat your guy off this release and go and win downfield. I think that there is a duty to get DK into situations where he can run across the middle. And I think it's going to work that way. I think Grubb is going to... I'm so excited to see what Ryan Grubb's going to do with this offense. I think everything that having spoken to Washington players, having spoken to people who watch the Huskies all the time, people who know Ryan Grubb, I'm fascinated to see what this offense is going to look like. And I think he's going to have an amazing year. And I think my prediction will be in 6 months' time, they probably will pay him. But that is coming. I think we've kind of he's got a couple of years left. And I think the Jefferson contract has made everybody sort of tune back to, wow, this is around the corner. And we'll see what happens, because I'm very comfortable with DK having a great year, and then one way or another, you're paying him, or his trade value is really
good. The one thing that's come out of the OTAs, I mean, OTAs are OTAs, and it's a bunch of guys running around, not doing much. But again, we haven't seen the linebackers. That's going to be a storyline. The two linebackers they got in the offseason, you haven't seen those. What are they going to do when they get into training camp? And then the right side of that offensive line is that it just seems, and I hope we're wrong, but boy, I don't know. I got just a weird feeling that they aren't letting on maybe just how bad or banged up Abe Lucas is.
Well, Brady Henderson wrote an article, I think it's in the last 2 weeks. I can't remember. My mind's been all over the place, this live show. And he said, he reported something that was very encouraging about Abe Lucas. And he walked back because Pete Carroll used the word chronic to describe. Chronic was the word that he used to describe the knee injury. And when you hear words like that, you think this is never going to go away. And off the top of my head, the Henderson article implied that since he's had this surgery, that is no longer the consideration. Now, whether he's going to be back to be 100%, and here's the other thing, Puck, is, listen, it's not easy to just basically have 18 months off doing elite level offensive line play and then go out there and, oh, by the way, just play a few NFL games and be back to your best. It might take him a whole year. Let's say he's back for like week 6. Let's say he starts on the pup and he's back week 6. He could play every game from week 6 till the end of the season and still be nowhere near his best. And that should be acceptable, because he needs to get back up to game fitness and that level of, and just getting that familiarity of back being in the NFL. And remember, he's only had 1 year in the NFL. So I think there is a chance that maybe in terms of career, it's not as concerning as we thought, but for this year, I think it will be. And we've talked about it a lot. That offensive line, it worries the heck out of me. I just think this is going to be an issue again for the whole season. I do not have faith in the interior players that they have right now. I like Christian Haynes a lot, but he's a rookie. Center's a question mark. Left guard's a question mark. Right tackle's a question mark. Charles Cross is a question mark for me. And it bothers me, because I think it could derail some of the good stuff about this offense. And I don't know what the fix is, because they didn't. How do you sort it out? Maybe Creed Humphrey's a free agent to be. Maybe the Chiefs will somehow let him get into free agency and they're going to spend a fortune on him next year. Who knows? But short of doing stuff I don't know how
you and I we can sit there and rave and be excited about Ryan Grubb's offense all we want. But if his offensive line can't protect anybody and they can't do anything, then it's going to be an issue. I mean, I thought Grubb kind of hinted at it when he talked to the media last week. Said, we've got like 50% of our offense in, but it's kind of hard. to get everything in because of, the uncertainty on the right side. He knows that. I mean, listen, if they're not solid, they're on the right side or on the line in general. Doesn't matter what great play calls he's going to dial up if they can't protect Geno or run block for Walker and Charbonnet. Doesn't mean anything.
The one thing, if it offers some kind of positive to all of this, is that the San Francisco 49ers have been the best team in the NFL at winning the line of scrimmage consistently over the last sort of few years. And the reason on their offensive line, they have the most impressive left tackle to grace the league in the last 14 years in Trent Williams, and then a bunch of Jags. And the reason that they still do such a good job is because Shanahan's scheme is perfected beautifully. So, yeah, the what I would say is if, and it's a big if, Charles Cross could take a jump this year and become a legit left tackle, and they took him in the top 10, so it's not a vain hope. But if he could elevate his play, and if this could secure the left tackle position to give Geno Smith's blindside some proper protection, then maybe with better coaching, scheming, tactics up front, I'm not saying that Grubb and Huff are going to be Kyle Shanahan, because that would be difficult, but maybe they can just work around some of the.
All right, man. Great stuff, Rob. Congratulations again to you and your rest of your crew on that live show. That's awesome, man. Again, like I said, I loved all the pictures. It looked like a great crowd, and I can imagine how nerve-wracking that must have been, but also fun at the same time. So congratulations on that. Rob's a weekly appearance here at pucksports.com, brought to you by Superior Linen Service, family owned and operated since 1926. Provide the highest quality of products and service to the greater Puget Sound area. Get a free quote today, suplinen.com. Give them a call, 253-383-2636. Go check out Rob's work, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Find him on YouTube and, of course, X at Rob Staton. All right, Robbie, we'll talk to you next week, my friend.